Today, I have a special guest. We're going to talk a little bit about his background and a little bit of his goal and his mission upon his phrases and works and the things that he stated and his personal admissions of himself in his bio. I have Edward Feinberg on right now, and I apologize again if I butcher that because I am terrible. I am terrible with that sort of thing with names and pronunciations. But according to him, he said he had an unusual introduction into dentistry. That was enough to spark my interest and how he wants to treat dentistry and introduce it into the world and help people with their different processes and how they get to take care of their teeth and their health, which I'm sure it's not often that we get to have these conversations with people in that background. The last time I had one, I was novocained, so I'm sure there were, this is the first time we get to have this kind of conversation, and I thought it would be very interesting. So, uh, now that I say it, I was going to say Mr. Edward, but Mr. Edward, yes, because Mr. Ed, it sounds totally different. So,
And I would
Miss,
be a horse dentist.
right, right. Now that I said it in my head, so Mr. Edward, welcome to the show. S- Please tell me about this unusual introduction into dentistry. I'm sure that's a story to have that catalog.
Well, I grew up in dentistry. My dad was a master and pioneer of full mouth reconstruction and crown and bridge dentistry. And I learned everything from him. And I started practicing with him when I graduated from dental school. And we practiced together as dentists for 23 years, which is a
Wow.
very long time. So I learned everything from him. And the techniques that I learned from him are not taught. I have over 100,000 pictures that span 70 years of crown and bridge cases where all the teeth were prepared and handled in the exact same manner according to the same basic principles. And the cases followed for decades with x rays. And what I'm doing comes from dentistry's roots. But somewhere along the line, the profession veered away from those basic principles. And what is being taught today is the reason why so many dentists are having difficulty with crown and bridge, specifically crowns falling out and decay under their crowns. And I have not had those problems over the course of my career. And so much so that dentists today would rather extract the teeth and place implants rather than save the teeth. And they are extracting teeth that I could save easily, which I think is very sad because there's nothing better than saving your own teeth. While implants may sound good, and I'm not against them, I'm against their overuse and inappropriate use, but there are definite things wrong with them. And if you could save your own teeth, you would be better off. So now, my father, in his day, he stuck his neck out to save teeth that most dentists today wouldn't even try, or they would say, oh, they're unsalvageable. And a lot of those cases lasted 30 years or more. So when you think about that, there's a lot of misconceptions about what can be done in dentistry today. It's very sad because in a learned profession, you like to think that you are advancing. But if what comes down the pike is not compared to what came before, however cool it is, however cool the technology is, you are not advancing. And I am not against technology. I am against technology that violates the basic principles that I believe in. And that's what I see going on. There isn't a dental institution in the country that teaches what I've done for my entire career. And I think that's sad. And I want to change that because I know they're going in the wrong direction. And I'm ignored primarily by corporate interests and companies that want to sell technology and implant companies. And that's a very, very tough thing for me because I only care about what's best for patients. I don't care about anything else. And I want to make sure that they get the choices they need, if they need complex treatment, and that they understand that they're doing something because they want to and not because they're being pushed into treatment and treatment that's invasive or overly invasive, which is what I'm against.
This is a very heavy start, but I absolutely love this. You are echoing things that I have heard in the medical industry. I have a friend that is I don't know the exact term, and I never really ask, but she is a helicopter nurse. And she deals with a lot of, situations where they're on the go trying to save lives airborne, and she's doing these things. And you have said almost verbatim some of the things, even though they're different fields, that she is experiencing on the corporate level, of how they treat people, how their system, how their structure and their operating systems are working. Even though there's advancements in this technology and the things that they can do, the principles and the underlining is still the same, which is again something that is unfathomable to somebody like me that has doesn't have the experiences that you do, that just walk into the dentist on whatever day or whatever average. So it's almost like a landslide for me to hear that from you. What is it about the industry right now, especially like saving teeth, that you would like to change or just make people aware of?
Well, first of all, I want them to understand that what they think is impossible is possible. I'm doing things that they think are impossible. And it's only because I don't share the same misconceptions that they were indoctrinated with, which I'm shocked because what I'm doing is really not radical. It came from the roots of the profession. This is what came before. And now we're supposedly advancing, and the work isn't holding up like it used to. I have 70 years of documented evidence that says I'm right, and I can show cases and how they lasted and why they lasted. Because a lot of what we're doing in dentistry is engineering. And I'm seeing a lot of practitioners violate basic principles of engineering, not just for natural teeth, but also for implants. You can't overload a foundation, or something's got to give. And that happens in the civil engineering world. And what you just described happening in medicine is exactly what's happening in my field. It's the same thing. Money and healthcare really are not a good mix. And as a healthcare practitioner who cares about patients, I always put them first. And my yardstick was always, if you had what your patient had, would you want this for yourself? And this is what I'm talking about. Like, I just had a patient come to me, and I'm not sure he was even a good candidate for implants because the teeth in the front were missing from an accident. And I think a lot of the bone was missing as well. And if you can't put good long implants in, then they shouldn't be done. But somebody talked him into doing an all on four case where they take all the teeth out and they put four implants in, and a lot of times they can't sink the implants in deep enough that it could support this big superstructure that not only replaces the missing teeth, but the missing gum and bone as well. And you're really overloading those structures. And a lot of them are going to fail. I really think there's going to be a lot of lawsuits over that. Because when it does fail, the ridges were flattened to make this case. And that patient won't even be able to wear a denture. So imagine having invasive treatment like that. That's a last resort. I have so many better options for patients that I could offer them. And that patient I was just talking about, I could have saved all of his back teeth. I could have made him a precision attachment case that I made for cleft palate patients, which is a great case. Or maybe even done some fixed bridge work and designed it so that in case something happened, we wouldn't have to do the entire case over. That's how I think. I try to think about what might go wrong and what can you do to prevent the patient from having future trouble. In fact, crown and bridge, which most people think are nothing more than tooth coverings, should be designed to compensate for all the things that are wrong. When you look at my x rays, you could see how it looks like the margins of the crown are sitting right on the bone. They're not, of course, because the body wouldn't accept that. But that is bringing the forces up as close to the supporting structure, which is the roots and the bone, as possible. So that makes sense from an engineering standpoint. And the evidence to me is overwhelming for 70 years of cases being designed that way. And yet that is not taught. A lot of people are having trouble, and the techniques that are being taught violate the basic principles that allowed my dad and I and my dad's teacher to have so much success. And I know that may not make me popular, but it's the absolute truth.
I appreciate your passion about this, and it astounds me because it seems to be like there's an education gap between. I mean, I was never taught dentistry in my education of school, or where unless I went specifically into the field, I wasn't even aware of things. The only information that was given to me was based upon Colgate commercials or something along those lines, and it's something that how do we improve that? How do we improve that education and the
Well, it's
information that's
really
given?
doctor actually means treat teacher. That's what it really means. And I see myself as a teacher foremost. My job is to educate patients about what's going on in their mouth, what they can do to prevent disease, and whatever treatment that makes it possible for them to hold on to their teeth and prevent future problems. I see a lot of dentists now doing what I like to call a piecemeal approach, which only considers filling a hole or a space, instead of looking at everything from an overall approach. And I'll give you a perfect example. So, one of the things that we now see rampant is the single tooth implants, where wherever there's a missing space, they're sticking an implant in. And, if let's say the patient has what I would call a virginal tooth or virginal teeth, meaning there is no fillings and no periodontal bone loss, that's fine. That's a perfect place for it. But that is not what you see when you go to the lectures and read the articles that are published. You see the teeth surrounding the space where they're going to place the implant full of fillings. They have crowns, they're going to need crowns, they have periodontal bone loss. That patient would be much better off with bridge work that does something good for the entire area, and that's the end of the patient's problem, rather than a single tooth implant that does nothing for the teeth around it and only fills a space. And the patient's problems are never solved, they're never done with it. So, what does it for me is when you think this way, you get to watch your patient walk in year after year for their hygiene visits and watch the work that you did last in health year after year after year, and very little changes in the x rays over sometimes over decades. There's no better feeling in the world than that, than you did something great for that patient and you prevented them from losing their teeth. That's why we're supposed to be there. We're supposed to be there to help patients from and prevent them from losing their teeth. That's what my primary purpose is. And sometimes I'm not against implants at all. I've done a lot of implants. When they first came to this country in the early 80s, we started doing them. But I see now it's like the Wild West, like they're looked at as panaceas, and they are not. And that worries me. So, like, I think that there's a misconception especially among young practitioners, that implants are more lucrative than crown and bridge, and a lot of them have enormous debts from school loans, and so they need to make a lot of money, and that's their overriding concern. Whereas, I think if you have good crown and bridge skills, good implant skills, you do what the patient needs. You're still going to make the money. I mean, you just do what the patient needs, but they become one trick ponies. All they know how to do is implants, so everybody gets that. And that's not being a good practitioner, in my opinion. And what I'm trying to do is educate people that they could do both well. And if you have both skills in your armamentarium, then you can pick and choose what's really best for each patient. What would you want for yourself if you had that? It's not just the money; it's also what you have to go through, the invasiveness of the treatment, and I think that's a major consideration. If you have patients who are not able to sit through that treatment, do you have choices for them if they're not candidates for sophisticated dentistry? I have a lot of those choices too, and what does it for me is that I help people, and everybody's not the same, and you have to pick and choose what's really best for each person. And in complex cases, that can be very difficult, and you can't make a snap determination. And some patients have a misconception that we are all the same, and that that they can you look at you and right away, without thinking about anything, come off with a diagnosis, a treatment plan, and give you a price. And that's not realistic. And anyone who falls into that trap is going to be sorry, I think, because that's how you make mistakes. And it's so easy to make a mistake. And sometimes you have to think very, very hard. What would be the best treatment for a patient? You know, sit down and talk to them and find out what is it they really want, and what would be the best thing that you could do to help them. That's what I've tried to do for my career, and that's what I got from my dad. He was a
I
master at it.
I'm an advocate for constantly learning and trying to learn and develop and get new things kind of going. And I can speak from my personal experiences, growing up, my community, my household, my parents and my parents' parents, dentistry and the preserving of our teeth was something that we weren't necessarily privy on or understanding the necessary and the need to. We only did those checkups and those things when, there was a problem, when there was something that was happening, or it was like, alerted then. What would you do, or what can you recommend to somebody like starting like that, from that base level of knowledge to getting to the point of, I don't know, at least being aware of
Well,
maybe
in
something?
in dentistry, prevention is everything. And the way people get into trouble is not just from decay, but also from periodontal bone loss. One of the things that we know causes periodontal bone loss is letting tartar and plaque and calculus build up, because that can cause the gums to become inflamed, and that can spread to the underlying bone. And you're not aware of it. That's one of the main reasons why we take x rays. And I normally like to take the x rays every 2 years, and the first thing I do is compare it to the previous set to see if there's been any changes. And if they are, you got to step in and do something about it, or that disease is just going to continue. And then any kind of crown and bridge that's done, or any kind of treatment, should compensate for and eliminate the causes of the disease. Because once bone is lost, we don't know how to grow it back. The teeth are connected to the bone by a ligament called the periodontal ligament. And once that's lost, no one has figured out how to reattach the tooth structure to bone or bone grafts. So even if you put bone grafts there, that doesn't really solve the problem in most cases. So everything that we do in dentistry, everything is prevention. And those are the main methods that we have for preventing problems. So the single best thing anybody can do for their oral health is to have their teeth cleaned regularly at their dentist's office, so that the dentist can keep track of what's going on with their mouths. And also good home care, and what you do at home too also helps a great deal. Because as I mentioned, once the bone is gone, we do not know how to grow it back.
How would you how would you identify, or the commoner, how would you identify someone that is, expertise or in your level of passion in the field, as opposed to somebody that's just there to, prescribe the next prescription and keep it moving?
Well, that you asked a really good question, because it's almost impossible for the average person to know, you know, how good their practitioner is. It's almost impossible, and what their level of knowledge is, because a lot of the things that we're judged on, like, oh, you have a nice office, or he's a nice personality, or he gives a good injection, that has nothing to do with the quality of the work. So you wouldn't know necessarily how good the work is until at least 5 years or so. And a lot of dentists are satisfied with getting 5 years out of the treatment, because the insurance company will pay for a new treatment after 5 years. Whereas I always thought that if I didn't get at least 10, that case was a failure. And I want to know why, whenever I can, why something failed. Because there are definite reasons why. For 99% of cases, there is a small percentage that have bone loss because of genetic reasons that we don't fully understand, but they're in the small minority. So I can show cases where Crown and Bridge worked on patients with cancer and diabetes and heart disease, where you have everything against you, and you wouldn't think that anything could work, and it still works because you have eliminated the major causes of the periodontal bone loss. So that's the purpose of doing dentistry. That's what I think, and that's how I was trained to do dentistry. Whereas I think what's being people are being trained now is to look at crown and bridges nothing more than tooth coverings. And so when I mentioned how you could see how my the margins of my crowns are sitting on the bone in the X-rays, you won't see that for most practitioners. Very, very rare. More likely that an old timer would have more expertise being able to do that than a young person. Because not one, even in my day, when I went to dental school, they didn't teach the techniques that I learned from my dad. And that came first. My dad's teacher did this. That's
It
scary when you think about it. You think we're advancing? I don't think so.
I always like to say that the speed of information and the speed of technology, they don't travel at the same pace. You know, there's a gap between of what's possible and what we can imagine. It's kind of amazing to me to watch the advancements. I'm an instructional designer by trade, and I love the advancement of technology. But at the same time, it's also my job to make sure that it works and to teach how it works. So to see something in the practitioner field, it's that kind of change, I can see where there would be information
So
gaps.
I'll give you a perfect example. In dentistry, when you prepare a tooth for a crown or a bridge, you typically put a ledge on the tooth all the way around. Most people today are making what they call butt joint restorations, meaning that when you make the crown, you make it to the end of the ledge. Those crowns can never be sealed, and they also don't fit the same way. And because bacteria are 2 to 10 microns, and the best marginal adaptation is maybe 40 to 120 microns. That's might as well be the Grand Canyon to a bacteria. My crowns are based on the mason jar cover. So I go beyond the ledge all the way down. And so my crowns fit properly and they don't fall out. I let the patients wear the dentistry on a trial basis with Vaseline or rubber and they don't fall out. Once they cement it permanently, they almost never come out and almost never. That's not one of my problems. And because the mason jar cover is one of the best known things ever devised for food preservation, I don't get decay under my crowns either. And those are the two major problems that dentists are having, and that is the reason. So now in technology, they came along and invented a machine that makes a ceramic crown that's a butt joint type restoration that only can go to the ledge, and everyone is impressed. Oh, look, this came out of a computer. Those are no different than the old high fusing porcelain crowns that were baked in an oven in the 1960s. You think we didn't know what was wrong with them then? That was what was wrong. They can never be sealed. And that's why there were so many problems with it. They knew that then. But now, corporate interests, they want to sell this machine, and patients don't know. They think, oh, wow, this is really space age technology. And they don't know that this is opens the door for future troubles. And in fact, a lot of dentists put it in the corner, and even though they spent all this money on it, and uh, and that's the end of it. In fact, you want to even see something even scarier? This company in Connecticut invented a robot to prepare this kind of crown on a patient, make the crown out of a block of ceramic by milling it in a computer milling machine, and then insert it and cement it without a human being. And of course, the company is touting, "Oh, this is such a big improvement. It's crappy dentistry," and they're not saying that. And they are brainwashing all of the young people to think that this is good dentistry and that technology is always better. It's not true. Technology that conforms to basic principles is better in a lot of ways, but technology that does not is not an advancement, and most dentists cannot tell the difference.
I love what you're doing, and I have a question that I always ask. Um, what keeps you motivated? I obviously see the passion that you have and the lineage and the integrity that comes through in what you're speaking. So I want to ask the question because I don't want to put words in your mouth. So what keeps you motivated?
Well, I had the privilege of studying with a genius. I've had an amazing career. I've done things that most dentists think are impossible. And really, I want to help them and show them a better way of doing things. I wish I had more opportunity in my profession, and my profession appreciated me to teach young people how to do this kind of dentistry. I want to be somebody's mentor, and I can't find anyone who wants a mentor. So I have a teaching website, www.theonwardprogram.com, which anybody can go to, and all the instructions on how to do good crown and bridge. I think I have like 35 courses, and I just finished my third book, which is a textbook on how to do crown and bridge, and it's going to be printed by Elsevier. It's going to be published sometime at the end of this year or beginning of next year. And so I'm very excited about that. And I'm hoping that I could reach some of my colleagues and help them to do better dentistry.
That's awesome. Is there a way to connect with you and on any social media platform if they can reach out to you, or maybe you have an agency or agent or something? Is there something that they can reach out to, and if they have any questions?
I'm more than happy to answer any of their questions. The best way to reach me is through the website, www.theonwardprogram.com. And there's an email contact form, and I respond to all the emails that are sent to me. If I could help somebody, I try very hard to help them. But, people always ask me, do I know practitioners in their area? And there were very, very few practitioners who were trained the way I was. Most of them are in New York. And even though I live in Arizona now, most of my life I spent in New York.
I am sure that we are going to have to maybe take another deep dive because there is so much information. I am just flabbergasted with the amount of information and just shifting my entire perspective on the dental industry that you've just done. Um, but I also want to respect your time and maybe invite you back really soon because I'm thinking
Oh, I
that
would love to come. I would love to.
I'm thinking there's a lot of people that can benefit from that, and I want to make sure that you get the right kind of audience. And trust me, I will start sending people your way for any questions that they have in this
I
area.
I I do have one piece of advice, if it's okay,
Sure.
for patients, and that is, we are essentially no different than the physicians. We have good, bad, and everything in between, and we are not all the same. And if you don't like what somebody told you, one dentist told you, don't hesitate to get a second opinion because maybe somebody else can help you in a way that that person can't. And I think that's very, very important because, there are good, bad, and everything in between all over.
Mr. Edward, thank you so much for everything that you've done and you continue to do. I think it's an amazing platform for you. I think it's an amazing platform. I think you have an amazing gift and being just the way you talk about it, you can see like I'm a runner. You would be able to tell my passion, the way I'm talking about running, the and artwork and nerd stuff. I but I can see that your passion is there and helping people. And I'm sure that it probably comes through when you see them smile even more. It's just something that you can see your work, your passion come through and it being part of somebody else's picture, somebody else's smile. I can kind of see that from you and just talking to you in this time. And I think that's very commendable. I want to make sure that we stay in touch. I'm going to reach out here, on LinkedIn. If you're on there, I'm going to reach out, make sure that we connect and
I am on LinkedIn. Yeah,
any
I'm on
social media
LinkedIn.
that
I'm on
you're on,
Facebook.
I will make sure that I attach that and we'll continue that. But any closing thoughts?
Well, I pretty much said what I wanted to say. I wanted to make people aware of things, and I want them to to stop and think before they let somebody do something invasive on them and make sure it's something they really want to do, and not something they're being talked into or pushed into.
Thank you very much. So guys, stay tuned, and I'll try to have Mr. Edward back on. Thanks.
Every day is a blessing. The time we spent together, all we can do is promote change. 24 hours better.